Hi everybody, I hope you enjoyed learning about Dear John Brown yesterday. Remember, he decided to try to rob a place to get guns and arm slaves to start a rebellion, but unfortunately he was caught and executed. So in the North they think of him as this great hero because he tried to help slaves, but in the South they thought that he was kind of like a terrorist because he just tried to hurt all these innocent people. So this is one of the causes of the Civil War, which we call the Brothers' War, because it is the North and the South fighting each other, which could literally be brothers fighting if somebody believed that, if somebody agreed with the North and somebody agreed with the South, depending on how you want to split it. So today we're going to learn about all the other major divides between the North and the South that will eventually lead to our country's bloodiest war, okay? Ready for this? Before we start, I need you to get a blank piece of paper and something to color with. You can make it pretty later. Right now, you probably just need a pencil or a pen. Up to you. You're at home. You're going to make a chart that looks just like the one you see on your screen, but without the words in the middle. So you're going to put at the top North and South, and then on the side slavery, cultural, economic, and constitutional. So if you need to pause, I would do that now. Get your paper and write the borders, the north, south, and the sides. So we're going to get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is slavery. We've talked about it before. It's a huge problem at the time, or not, depending on who you are. So in the North, they believed that slavery should be illegal. So we've talked about abolitionists, and the majority of people in the North agreed with this. They did not support slave labor. Now, notice I say the majority. That means some people might have supported it, but most people did not support it. So they were considered abolitionists because they wanted to end slavery. So, under North slavery, you're going to draw a picture that's going to help you remember that the North did not support slavery. However you want to draw it, I personally would draw maybe some type of slave that I can think of. I like chains. And then a no sign, like a big red no sign. That's how I would draw it to remember that the North did not want slavery. And the next side, though, in the South, they generally supported slavery. So again, generally supported, which means not everybody did, but most people did. So most Southerners did not actually own slaves, but they supported the practice of slavery because many people in the South relied on slaves for money, for social reasons, and for political reasons. So again, you're going to draw a picture under South and slavery, and you're going to draw some way so you can remember that they supported slavery. Now our next thing is cultural. So in the North, there were a lot of farms, but large cities such as New York and Boston existed in the North, as well as many smaller cities. So the North is much more urban. So you're going to draw a whole bunch of buildings like a city, like think New York, and that'll help you remember their culture was a lot different than in the South, which is more rural. So that is, yes, there were large cities like New Orleans, but for the most part, houses are spread out. So I always think of farms. So I would draw a farm for the South and a city for the North, generally speaking. Our next category is economics. So how did we get our money? Because you know that's all that matters. In the North, because it's mostly cities, they had a lot of factories. So they were making goods to trade with other countries or with our country itself. So that's where they built, they might make machines, they might make parts, they might make fabric. Whatever they're making to sell. So that's how they made their money. In the South, however, they had a lot of farming. So the large plantations were in the South, and slaves worked on those plantations, which goes back to that why the South supported slavery is they used them for their money. That's how they got their money, was the slaves would work on the plantation. They could sell their crops. So, for example, think the cotton gin. The slaves could pick the cotton, we could use the cotton gin, ship the cotton up north. The north could make it into fabric, and we can ship the fabric off and sell it. So we all get our money somehow through this. So for your pictures, you can draw factories for the north, and then you can draw farms for the south. But again, it's whatever's going to help you remember the difference between north and south economy. And then the last difference is constitutionally. So at the beginning of the year, we learned about the Constitution, and we know it was a debate that they still worry about today. So in the North, they believed that the federal government should be stronger than the state's government. So if the federal law says that something should be illegal, then everyone agrees it's illegal. Whereas in the South, they believed that the states' rights should be more powerful than the federal government. And think about that for a second. When we think back to King George III, they were afraid of having that strong central government because they didn't want a repeat of King George. So that was one of the differences between them, is that in the North, they think that the federal government, like the president, decides something, then the whole country has to follow it. In the South, they believe that if Georgia decides something, then Georgia gets to do it. It doesn't matter what the federal government says. So at this time, we have a presidential election, which is super exciting, and our dear Abraham Lincoln is elected. So many of us support him now because we know that he helped to end slavery. But at the time, the South didn't agree with that. So he was the only anti-slavery candidate, and he won. And when he won, the South got really scared because they didn't want to lose their slaves, right? They really supported it because they needed it for their economics. So they decided to form their own country, just peacefully. Instead of being part of the United States of America, they're going to form their own country, and they elect their own president, Jefferson Davis. So now the country is split in two. We have the United States of America and the Confederate States of America. So Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, because of these divides between the North and the South. So we're going to learn more about what happens during the war, but these are some of the causes of why the South seceded or separated from the North that eventually will cause our battle. So right now we're just two separate countries living peacefully, but you guys know soon it's going to be a bloody battle. So make sure you filled out your chart. You're going to draw pictures for all 8 sections to help you remember, and again, we'll give you this chart when you return to school. Have a great day.